Thanks for joining us and welcome back to the Watchman on the Wall podcast. Periodically, we'll bring you true stories of angelic encounters, heavenly visitations, near-death experiences, as well as modern-day prophecies that are relevant to us today. When we come back, we'll begin our next episode. Do you want to make a podcast? Spotify's got a platform to let you make one super easy, then distribute it everywhere and even earn money. It's all in one place for free. It's called Spotify for Podcasters, and here's how it works. Spotify for Podcasters lets you record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. So no matter what your setup is like, you can start recording and creating today. Then you can distribute your podcast to Spotify and everywhere podcasts are heard. Video podcasts are also available on Spotify. With Spotify for Podcasters, you can earn money in a variety of ways, including ads and podcast subscriptions. And best of all, it's totally free with no catch. The Watchman on the Wall podcast has been using Spotify for Podcasters for the last 4 years, and we highly recommend it. So give it a try and download the Spotify for Podcasters app, or go to www.spotify.com/podcasters to get started. Hello and welcome back to the Watchman on the Wall podcast. Today, Stan Johnson is going to speak on several prophecies and dreams, and one brand new one on the coming digital currency. And according to Stan and Scripture, this digital currency ushers in the one world government, which Stan will discuss in part 2 of our podcast. So here now is Stan Johnson.
I've got 3 really important dreams for you today. We know that we're coming to a digital dollar. We know that coins and paper are going to go away. We know that the dollar is going to crash. Matter of fact, we know a lot of things. Now this, I think, is very important. This came from an 11-year-old boy, one of the members of our congregation. No, you don't know them. I've been asked not to release his name. But he doesn't follow Prophecy Club, and he doesn't know anything about prophecy. He doesn't actually come to the Spirit of Prophecy Church in Plano. He's in another location. So he is like a blank sheet of paper when it comes to prophecy. All of a sudden this morning, he wakes up with this dream. And he starts telling this, and his parents start writing it down. They send it over to me. Is this God? I said, absolutely, it's God. Now, what's God doing? In the last days, God is going to pour out His Spirit on all flesh. Your old men will dream dreams, young men will see visions. And I believe it also, we're going to see more of this. We're going to see more of children that God is speaking to. So this dream. So this 11-year-old has this dream. He doesn't even know what he's saying, but we know. In the dream, I'm over at my grandfather's house. He wakes and has a t-shirt on that says, "Cash is king." They say, he's always saying that. And he has most of his life savings in cash. Now, that's an important point because the dream is about to say all cash will become worthless. Now, I don't think that's immediately. Matter of fact, he didn't think the dream took place immediately. I think right now it is a good idea to have 2 weeks to 2 months worth of cash, because there's going to come a time in between moving from cash and coin, paper to coin, over to digital, that it's going to be important to have some of it. Anyway, let's go on. I'm over at my grandfather's house. He wakes and has a t-shirt on that says, "Cash is king." Grandpa's favorite saying is, "Cash is king." In the dream, I sensed that the dollar bill crashed and was no good anymore. This is an 11-year-old, okay? The dream cuts to people walking on the street with nice clothes. Now, I'm going to show you another dream right after this where this guy also saw people wearing nice clothes. In other words, this big problem comes on the world quickly. Jason Meeks said it came overnight. Nice clothes on, but somehow I knew that money-wise they were poor. Somehow I knew this was a depression, like in the history books. Well, I remember my mom and dad talking about it, and I'm about to turn 70. I knew this was a depression like in the history books, only people had nice clothes on instead of old clothes. Meaning it comes quickly, meaning it might be coming on us very soon. Then I saw in people's hands an electronic device about the size of a cell phone if you turn it sideways. It was a checkbook, but it was all digital. I've never seen anything like it. It was like an iPad and a cell phone mixed together. But it was not a cell phone. You could not play games or apps or make a phone call. It was strictly for currency. You could buy anything if you had enough of this digital currency, but you could not sell anything. I'm going to read that page again. Look at it. There's a lot of confirmations in this. Keep in mind this comes from Lebanon. There's no way he could cook this up. I saw in the people's hands an electronic device about the size of a cell phone. That's kind of what Dana Coverstone saw. If you turn it sideways, it was like a checkbook, but it was all digital. I've never seen anything like it. It was like an iPad and a cell phone mixed together, but it was not a cell phone. You could not play games or apps or make a phone call. Okay, you can't play games, you can't do apps, you can't make a phone call from it. In other words, this device is only for buying and selling. It was strictly for currency. You could buy anything if you had enough of this digital currency, but you could not sell anything. Now remember, the Bible says, the day is going to come that no man can buy or sell save he had the mark and the name of the beast or the number of his name. Buy or sell. So this case, at this point, he's saying that they're only limiting the selling. Not everyone had equal amounts of this new currency. Only people like, President Biden or Elon Musk, very, very famous people, had a lot of this new digital currency. Only a few of your average people had very little, just enough digital currency to buy basics for one day of their lives. Now, hang on. Remember Revelation 6:6 says, "And I heard a voice in the midst of the four beasts say, a measure of wheat for a penny, and 3 measures of barley for a penny, and see they hurt not the oil and the wine." I've taught for many years that this is essentially saying that things get so expensive that you work all day long for enough pay just to feed you for that day. In other words, there's no getting ahead. There's no savings. There's no buying things like houses and cars and things like that. Now let's read the last line. The rest of the people had no digital currency, but still had the digital checkbook, but nothing in it. No means of buying or selling. Then the dream cuts back to Grandpa. My grandpa says to himself while looking out the window, "There is no way this is happening. There are too many rules in place to prohibit this." Then the dream cuts again to me and Grandpa. We're in a war zone. And I said, "Grandpa, get down because people are shooting at us." The soldiers had blonde hair and blue eyes with very pale skin. I could not tell what country they were from. We had dived into a trench with American soldiers, but the foreigners captured our area and took Grandpa prisoner. Somehow, they knew he had a lot of cash. I was lying in the trench, scared. Somehow, I knew Grandpa had died of stress and felt bad for my grandpa, and the dream ends. Now, what's this talking about? This is talking about a lot of things a lot of people already been talking about. Now let's go to the next one. I already read this one, but it's about a month ago. The guy's name is Brandon. He said, "The Lord showed me the dollar crash and banking crash and the new digital platform. The Lord showed me an American flag. The flag transformed into a $100 bill waving in the wind. Would you say that might be a digital checkbook? Might be. Suddenly it transformed into a digital code, almost like a crypto code. It was moving like it was alive." That's what Chris Reed also said. He said he saw something like a cell phone He saw it being the digital dollar. He saw the picture of Washington on it, but it was digital. And then there's the other guy that had another dream where he saw the dollar became digital. As a matter of fact, I could probably find, I'm going to say 7, maybe even 10 different dreams and visions where people have seen the dollar going away and going to digital. Let's go on. Suddenly it transformed into a digital code, almost like a crypto code. It was moving like it was alive. It was like internet math code. It kept moving and moving, and I said, Lord, what is this? And the Lord said, the dollar's about to turn into a digital dollar. Are you listening? I'll read it again. The dollar's about to turn into a digital dollar. He said it would be worth half what it's worth right now. Now, others have seen that it drops first 30%, then down to 50%, to 66%, then it finally is worthless. So a $100 bill will be worth about $50. Then he showed me the banks all went bankrupt. Are you listening? I mean, how many of these does it take before we say, McFly, are you listening? I mean, what does it take? Then he showed me the banks all went bankrupt. All the money in the banks, whether you were rich or poor, the banks seized it all. In other words, they took all of the coins and the paper. Why? Because they turned it all into digital. All the money in the banks was seized. It was now the property of the bank. I don't know how, but somehow they seized all the money in the banks. People lost it all. That's when you're going to be glad that you called cornerstoneassetmetals.com. And if you have any excess money any place, again, I can't give you financial advice. I can just tell you I think it's a good idea to have at least a couple of weeks of cash. I think it's a very good idea to have a minimum of a handful of gold and a handful of silver. And that's really nowhere close to enough. But if you have a large amount of money in the bank or in some kind of paper, maybe it's a 401k, maybe it's the stock market, I think it's very, very dangerous. Seized all the money in the banks and the people lost it all. Loans that you have on your house and your cars and everything, I saw that they took all of it. They called it a debt jubilee because they couldn't foreclose and take everybody's houses and everybody's cars because the dollar crashed. Instead, they just wiped it all out and created a whole new digital platform. Does that sound like it makes sense to you? Does to me. And when an 11-year-old child is told this, they couldn't possibly cook this up. And by the way, on that, I talked to the 11-year-old child's dad and mom, for that matter, and they sat down and quizzed him. They went through that 5 times. And after 5 times, nothing changed. The 11-year-old boy gave it 5 times in a row with no changes. Okay, if he was cooking that up, I mean, that's what detectives do. I mean, they'll, okay, what happened? And then they record it, they make notes. What happened? Well, I already told you, tell me again. 3rd time, what happened? 4th time, 5th time. And if they're telling the truth, the story never changes. But if they're not telling the truth, then wait a minute, you said that was 4 o'clock. Now you're telling me it's 5 o'clock? See, they catch them in lies. Mom and Dad could not catch the 11-year-old in a lie, and he told the story 5 times. I hope you're listening. They called it a debt jubilee because they couldn't foreclose and take everybody's houses and everybody's cars because the dollar crashed. So they just wiped it all out and created a whole new digital platform. They created a new digital dollar. Boom. Isn't that what both of them are saying? And if you've been listening for a while, this is not the first time we've heard this, guys. Not the first time. Then the Lord showed me lines of people standing at Target stores trying to get food. They weren't dressed like they were in poverty-looking clothes, just like the 11-year-old kid said, okay? Like they were poverty-looking clothes, they still had nice clothes on. It was like money had gone and it just happened suddenly. It was like it happened overnight. That's what David Phillips said too. People were in lines at Target, at Walmart. Lines were like a mile long, but there were no products. There was no food there. There was hardly anything left in these stores. People waiting just to get whatever they could. I could see them all in a single file line that stretched what seemed to be forever. He showed me certain cryptocurrencies that would go up in value. He also showed me certain things that would happen with gold and silver. I assume he's talking about going up, but he didn't say that. I'm going to make that clear. He showed me the euro, and the euro would be in trouble because of what was going on with Europe and this Ukraine war. It was all going to happen like dominoes, falling one after another. Now let's jump to another one. Story on this one was, Leslie had this dream back in May of 2022. About 3 weeks ago on a Sunday morning, I was given a sermon, and all of a sudden I said something, and boom, it came back to Leslie. Well, apparently she never wrote it down. Apparently I never wrote it down. Maybe she just gave it. Anyway, somehow it was lost lost someplace. So anyway, she comes up, gets the microphone, and this is the dream she tells. She says, I remember it. The Lord brought it back to my memory. So she says, the dream starts with Stan and I being warned to fill our car with gasoline. Now, I think this would be the third prophecy that we've had that gasoline is going away. You remember Pastor Massey had that. Remember, he went to a gas station, he called AAA, said, I need some gasoline. AAA brought him just enough, a gallon or two, just enough to get home. He said, I need more than that. He said, there is no more than that. And the stations were out and AAA was out. They couldn't bring him any more gasoline. And then the last part of the dream was food was gone. Okay, think about that. Gasoline goes, food goes. Are you ready for that? So anyway, let's continue. Immediately we went to the nearest gas station, which was a convenience store. The convenience store was full of people. Right after Stan filled our tank with gas, other cars arrived trying to get gas and food. Gas and food, same thing as Massey was told. We left but watched from a distance. The store manager was yelling, there is no more gas. But people were running out carrying as much food as possible. They emptied the store of everything probably within minutes. Sitting in our car nearby, we watched as people began to fist fight, push and shove, and many people pulled out their guns. Several news helicopters were filming the scene. Then military helicopters arrived. Troops began rappelling down to the ground to get the chaos under control. Does that sound like normal? Okay, if we were to have some kind of chaos, do we see military helicopters with military rappelling to the ground to stop it? We didn't see that even in the summer of 2022.
We'll be right back with more of this very important topic right after this. Hello again, this is The Watchman. Please join us each week for an exciting and inspirational podcast dealing with angel encounters, heavenly visitations, near-death experiences, as well as modern-day prophecies that are relevant to us today. So tune in each week and share it with your friends. After all, they could use a little inspiration in their life, too. That's the Watchman on the Wall podcast, and now you can find us on YouTube. Now, in part 2 of our podcast, Stan Johnson uses scripture, prophecy, as well as news articles to talk about the digital currency as well as the coming world government. Now, the question I have is, if there is a world government, what's going to happen to our sovereign country here in the United States? And how much power is our Congress, Supreme Court, as well as the presidency going to have on this new world government? Are they going to turn over all our power and decision making over to a new world order? I certainly hope not. Here now is Stan Johnson with part 2 of this podcast.
Revelation 13 and Daniel 7 both say that we're coming to a world government. Vicky Parnell, Byron Searle, and Terry Bennett all three say that the tribulation has started. But if the tribulation has started, what I've always understood is we should be seeing a world government start. Now, yes, it's very close, but it's not started yet. And we're talking about that today. World government. Title, we talked briefly about this the other day. Title says, globalists making final moves to implement a great reset, followed by worldwide totalitarianism. One of the most important things happening right now that too few people are aware of due to many distractions dominating media headlines, or media is ignoring them, is a globalist effort to silence all truth. Yes. So they're trying to silence all truth, eliminate all cash, implement a global system of digital identification for all people. Those words are real true, and we got to watch it. The United Nations is pushing hard to create a global system of tyranny in which the globalists control everything. You better believe those words. They plan to do this by consolidating all governments, all money systems, all food supply systems, and what they don't say here, but we know, and all gods into worshiping just one. It's worldwide money, worldwide government, worldwide religion. Three things. That's where they're going for. As far as the finance component goes, the Bank for International Settlements recently proposed a blueprint calling for the creation of a unified ledger that will one day record the ownership of all assets on the entire planet. Why? Well, as you recall, the WEF has said, you'll own nothing, but you'll be happy. Well, how are they going to get all of the wealth out of the hands of the people? They do that with the big global collapse, which is at the door. The new global financial system will be driven and run by artificial intelligence. The BIS notes that through programmability, the need for manual interventions by actual human beings will be reduced, if not eliminated. If the globalists can attain this much power and control over our money using their unified ledger, they will also be able to revoke anyone's ownership of assets anytime by the simple push of a button, or so that no man might buy or sell save he had the mark with the name of the beast or the number of his name. Ownership of all the assets on the entire planet will be determined by their unified ledger. And so if you're a really bad boy or girl, they could go in and simply transfer ownership of all of your assets, not just things in their bank, but everything we own, to someone else or to the world government. Doesn't that make sense? For emergency situations that may arise, the UN has that covered too. At the upcoming Summit of the Future event in September 2024, the UN is going to push to seize global emergency powers that will give it total control over the handling of the next pandemic or the next emergency, whatever it might be. The Pact for the Future includes a provision which will create an emergency platform for the United Nations whenever a major global shock is deemed to have occurred, which, of course, they will create. So, if, and we're going to say when, there's another global pandemic, a world war, an economic collapse, something else they create, or some of the nationwide or some worldwide emergency, the United Nations would suddenly be telling everyone what to do and that you're going to lose all your money, assets, and you report to them. If you go and get the book Morals and Dogma by Albert Pike, if you'll look carefully right over here, it has the words ordo ab chao. Well, that's the key. What does that mean, ordo ab chao? That's actually Latin. Now, if you look that up on the internet, they'll tell you, for example, Novus Ordo Seclorum, they say that that's a new order of the ages. That's wrong. Novus Ordo Seclorum means they want to create a new order secular, a new order without God. Then when they've removed the God of everybody, then they will give them a new God, the Antichrist. Well, ordo ab chao is Latin, and it means order out of chaos. What order? A new world order. Out of what chaos? A chaos they will create, be it a war, be it a pandemic, be it a financial collapse. They create the next global problem, And that's how they seize world government. Now, it makes sense, doesn't it? Terry Bennett said, in 2010, the angel Gabriel came to him, told him that there were 3 periods, 7-year periods, and he told him exactly the things that are going to happen during these periods and showed him visions of them happening as they would happen. He says the United States would no longer be the number 1 world economy, or economically or militarily, and he said that would happen starting in 2008, and of course, that was when the big financial problem hit. He said 2008 would be the beginning of the economic sorrows. Now, he was told this in 2010, and it came to pass, so we better listen. In our nation and in the world, during this time, the great economic wealth of the United States will be neutralized, and the military power of the United States will be greatly diminished. The economic problems will be primarily caused for the military power being weakened. There will be a change in the U.S. currency. Now, that has not happened yet, but my understanding is it is at the door. As you recall, the Federal Reserve announced in April people could start signing up for the new CBDC. That's the Central Bank Digital Currency, which they say is going to come online in August. Then, the 41 nations of the BRICS have now openly stated that they are going to be going around the dollar starting in August. Wait a minute, that's just around the corner, isn't it? There will be a change in U.S. currency. A different currency is going to come, at least one. That will entail us no longer being the reserve currency of the world. In other words, the blessings that we've been able to glean by being the reserve currency is going to go. Now, essentially what that means is nations are not going to need all of those dollars, so consequently the dollars are going to be sold. And when they're sold for pennies on the dollar, and they start coming back. All of a sudden, overnight, our dollar becomes, well, as Dana Coverstone was shown, it goes from 100%, several of them were shown down 30% to 66%, 50%, 30%, finally 0. Terry Bennett was shown that they'll be Shane Warren was shown that they'll be blowing like worthless leaves in the wind. I remember Daniel Davis said in his dream he saw a man step to the podium and say, "Ladies and gentlemen, I have an announcement to make. The United States, as you have known it, has ceased to exist." Now, I suspected for a long time that was the Russians taking us out. I don't think that now. I actually think that that's the dissolving of all of the borders and making a world government. The United States, as you have known it, has ceased to exist. All property lines are dissolved, and the U.S. dollar is worthless. That's setting up the world government. Let's go on. In the governmental arena, we will go through a dramatic change in our government. Well, that's supposed to start in 2008. That certainly started with Donald Trump. And there will be a time of anarchy and chaos, and we've seen that, and it's going to get worse. For a while, we'll have a fractional government. Our government come down to the state level because the military will step in and seize control over the federal government. That's the internal revolution that Dimitri Duduman was told about. You'd call it a coup, but in all honesty, it'll be to help our nation. That's why the military will step in. Lawlessness, chaos was shown to me in civil unrest. When the checks from our government stop coming to the people, the chaos will ensue. Probably that's going to start in August, maybe sooner, maybe later, ballpark. We're going to see a major change with our government. The great economic turmoil, 2014, 15-year transition will bring on these changes in the government. And what happened in 2014, 15, and 16? Well, Trump came into the play. Then there will arise a new government in Europe. Haven't seen that yet. On the horizon. Which Gabriel warned me, keep your eyes on 4 nations. These are the signposts to what is coming. Keep your eyes on Greece, Italy, Spain, and France. Try to memorize this. Matter of fact, even better, go to prophecyclub.com and get the book, God's Warnings to America. Talked about it last week. Greece is going to one another Alexander the Great. Italy is going to one another emperor. Spain will one another king and queen. France is going to one another Napoleon. But Satan is going to offer all 3 to them in one.
Hello again, this is The Watchman. Please join us on our new video channel called Encounters from Beyond the Veil. It's the same exciting content as our audio podcast, but in a shorter, but yet a video format. Also, please subscribe so you won't miss any of our episodes. That's Encounters from Beyond the Veil, exclusively found on YouTube.
Well, thanks again for listening, and if you enjoyed this episode, please share it with your friends. Any comments or suggestions you may have, you can send to thewatchmanonthewall2020@gmail.com. We encourage you to subscribe so you'll always be notified of our future episodes. Well, thanks again, and we'll see you next time on the Watchman on the Wall podcast.